Good evening and welcome to the Talk Right podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Stennett. And this evening we've got a very special show for you. Normally we talk about audiobooks and authors and narrators, but since we're just right after Halloween, we got some horror authors on here for us. Nick, why don't you take the lead here and introduce our guests?
Well, howdy, everybody. We have three guests today. We have horror writer and also tropical authors writer, Armand Rosamilia, horror writer Hunter Shea, and horror writer and audiobook narrator Christopher Sorenson. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Look at this.
I forgot to do my business while you were doing the intro, so keep talking, Nick.
Okay. So we may or may not be live. Who knows?
Yeah, we are live.
Awesome. I'm going to start with a quick question about series versus standalone. Now, the reason I'm starting with this is a lot of our narrators have been listening to a whole bunch of authors in a row who have worked out how to go with a series. But with horror, more often than not, it's going to be a standalone. Although Chris has an excellent three-part series. But let me just go down the line. Hunter, do you tend to do standalone? Have you ever tried a series?
Yeah, most of what I do is standalone, but I have a couple of series. One is 3 books long. My first book, Forest of Shadows, when that came out, that's a paranormal ghost hunting book. And when my editor said, hey, this did great. Can you do something like it? And I said, you know what? Why don't I take that 5-year-old girl and make her 19 for the next book? And then I got such positive response to that. I did another one with her. I aged her a couple of years. And I'm planning to do a 4th one with her. So that's a little series. I love that character. I don't know. I love that character. And I have a 2-part series. Does it even count if it's 2?
Yeah.
It does? All right. So yeah, I had twins Nat and Austin McQueen who killed a bunch of Loch Ness monsters in Loch Ness Revenge, and then I brought them back to Sumatra in Savage Jungle to battle Orang Pendex in a lost city filled with dinosaurs, which is a very believable book. This is based on a true story. I was just a transcriber. And I brought them back, and I do a novel on Patreon that I've been writing for 2.5 years now. I just put out like a chapter every week or two. We're at chapter 102 right now, and it kind of takes characters from 5 different books that have all dealt with cryptids and puts them all together in this Godzilla Monster Island like battle with every cryptid you could think of.
Kaijus everywhere. Well, Armand, how about you? Do you? I know I have a ton of standalones, but I'm guessing you've got some horror series.
Yeah, a lot of times it's whatever the publisher is looking for. So I work with a couple of publishers that are just looking for standalone, one-shot books, which I do. But I also I've done a 9-book zombie series with 7 or 8 spinoffs from that. I've done a couple for another publisher. I've done 2 different trilogies: Green River Blend, which is a horror trilogy about coffee, and Chelsea Avenue, which is a horror trilogy set in Long Branch, New Jersey, and it spans about 25, 30 years. So, but then I've done a couple of standalones as well. So
I have to back up. You have a horror series about coffee?
Yes, called Green River Blend. It's about, and that's all I'm going to tell you, Nick. It's about coffee.
Was this inspired by your consumption of coffee?
Partly, yes. That was it was one of those mornings when I could not get the coffee in me quick enough, and I was trying to come up with a pitch for a publisher who I'd worked with previously, and literally that was the pitch. Was I'm writing this horror book about coffee, and they were like, "All right, write it, we'll buy it," kind of thing. And actually, I'm going to have coming up this month. I have a company that is going to be doing sample bags of actual Green River Blend coffee, that if you buy the print trilogy, you get one of those and I'll sign them. So that's kind of neat too. I've been trying to look for that for years, for somebody to realize my genius and make my own coffee.
That's great. Is it the coffee that that animal eats and then poops out, and then they take the coffee beans and make the coffee?
God, I hope so.
Well, Chris, I'm going to ask you a slightly twist on this. You did write a standalone for kids, which had some horror elements, but then you've done this masterful Messy Man series. But I'm gotten from a few conversations I've had with you that you're looking to do a number of different standalones. That as you've written this series, all these other ideas started bouncing around in there.
Well, yes. Well, I spent a lot of years as a graphic designer, including at the NBA, doing other people's biddings. So I would come home and I'd have this great software, and I'd make dream covers of novels that I had, and they'd just sit there. And so once I got these 3 books written, I've got a file of probably about 20 different covers that are ready to go. And all of them are standalone, because I've sat with this same story for 2.5 years, and I am itching to get into something a little shorter and in a different style, maybe something with coffee beans. Not sure, but yeah.
All right, great.
I've got a question. I'm self-published 100%. Armand, you're mostly traditionally published, aren't you?
I'm about half and half. I'm a hybrid. So a lot of my stuff I publish myself, and I've got it down to only a couple of series now that I do that. My Dirty Deeds series, which is my crime thriller series, the first one, I got a Kindle Scout contract, but I didn't really like the deal going forward with them because they wanted 1 book a year, and I thought for a crime thriller series you got to have a couple every year, or you lose readers. So from book 2 on, and I'm writing 9 now, it's that's self-published, and I have another couple of series that I'm self-published. But I work with a ton of different small press publishers, and I've dabbled in the big 5 with short stories and things over the years.
What about you, Hunter and Chris? Either one of y'all traditionally published also?
Everything is.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, everything except I have 2 of the books in that series I was talking about. All 3 of those actually, when Sam Hain Publishing went out of business, other publishers picked up the other books, but I said I want to hold on to those, and so a friend of mine had his friend make these amazing covers. So those, I put the first one out, God, I think it's 3 years ago now. The other 2 are coming out later this fall. I'm finally putting them back out. But I want some control over those for whatever reason. I think they feel closer to me than any other book, so I don't want anyone to take them. But that's, I think out of 29 books, 26 are traditional at this point. And even those 3 were traditional in the beginning.
Well, for me, I spent so many years writing screenplays for different production companies and going through so many different revisions for years and years and years to have them be completely greenlit, all the money attached, ready to go, locations, oh, no, we're going with something else. And so that's happened with 3 or 4 of my scripts. And so it just eats up so much time. When I finally went, I'm going to try something completely different. I'm going to be in control of everything. And so I read this little book called From Blue Collar to No Collar by some guy. So I started following that advice. And since I have the skills to do my own covers, and I have beta readers galore, and I loved doing my first one. And at this moment, I can't see myself giving up control, at least for the next year. I like being able to wake up in the morning and control my destiny until I go to bed.
Well, that's a hell of a cross section we got tonight.
Yeah, really.
Well, I'm going to stay with Chris here and continue with your other job.
Yes, yes.
Chris and I have known each other for a long time. He is an audiobook narrator with hundreds of titles under his belt, and he and I long ago talked about some creepy experiences. You know, when you're stuck in there and you've got a deadline, so you've been working probably longer than you should, and it's 2 a.m. and you're locked in a booth with just yourself and your voice. So this Messy Man series that Chris has, the main character is an audiobook narrator. I was curious, Chris, when you have been recording all these books and doing them late at night, have you ever heard anything over your earphones that you were like, wait a minute, what is that?
Well, I'll tell you, I've recently moved my booth. It was down in the basement. We live in an old house on the lake, and when we first moved in, when my wife and I first moved in, we were helping care for her elderly aunt who was bedridden. And so I had an office here, and right next to it was her bedroom. We had a hospital bed there. And so she was literally in the process of dying while I was going downstairs and recording. And sometimes Deb would leave the house and I'd be down there recording, going, you know, there's somebody upstairs who's literally in the process of dying, and I'm down here yakking my mouth off. And one time at about 2 a.m, I got my headphones on and I heard Chris. And I went, what the hell was that? And I went back, and there was the little wave file, and I went back and clicked it, and you couldn't hear Chris, but you heard, but I heard Chris in my headphones. So there was something there. But that was years ago. Nick, I haven't told you this. Since I moved my booth to the garage, 3 things have happened.
Oh boy.
The first one was I came in, I had set up the track for recording. I came in and it was already recording. It had recorded just from the moment that I came in the side door of the garage, and I could hear myself walking up to the booth, opening the door and sitting down. And then I go, what the? So I still have that clip. Another time the garage door opened by itself. And there was another thing, I can't remember what that is. I'll remember it. But I've told Deb these as soon as they happen. So it's not PR. Those really happen.
Wow. Stay in the garage, by all means.
Something's interesting in there. I don't know what it is.
All right, let me ask a question of Armand. I met you. Well, first off, I know you met Wayne at a book signing in Florida, and then Chris and I crashed a book signing that you were doing at a brewery. Mm-hmm. Beers and Booze, or Beers and Fears?
Beers and Fears.
Beers and Fears. Now, what I remember about that was we got to talking, and I talked a bit about my one horror book, but then I was explaining I was doing thrillers, and you said, oh, I'm doing thrillers as well. So you're someone who has done 2 very different genres. Did you always intend to do that? Do you remember the day you thought, I'm going to do a little crime thriller in Florida, as opposed to something with, Bigfoot ripping someone's head off?
It's weird. It was horror. It was always horror. So I actually grew up a huge Dean Koontz fan. That was, never read a lot of Stephen King, but I always read Dean Koontz. That was always my thing. And so I always intended I want to be a horror author. That's the dream since 12 years old. And it went from there to, I used to write in a place in Flagler Beach, in a little cafe. It's no longer there, Kokomo's. And I would write my horror books and stuff. And I was eavesdropping all the conversations. And this older couple was breaking up next to me. Like the lady was being such a bitch to this guy. And when he got up to leave, like, she was like, I don't like your kids. I don't want, and you're talking like, these are like 70-year-old people breaking up. And as he's leaving, she's like, you still have to pay for this. So he threw a 20 down. And I thought, I'm going to kill this lady in this next horror book, like, oh my God, she's awful. But then I kind of wrote it out as the scene, and I said, you know what? This is more like contemporary fiction type of thing. So I started writing a series, which became the Flagler Beach Fiction series. And it was, in this cool little fishing village, place and everything. And it sold really well. And I was like, okay, I can make this jump. And the crime thriller stuff was stuff that I always had in the back of my mind, but I always thought I'm kind of stuck as a horror author. And so it really gave me like the kick to go, you know what, I can do contemporary fiction and I can do crime thrillers and I can do nonfiction. So it really led to kind of like that aha moment of I can pretty much, if I write it, hopefully people will buy it. And that's kind of been a relief for me. I've been full-time for about 8 years now. So it's been a great journey. I'm blessed that I'm able to do this for a living, and I'm able to write stuff that I love. Horror is still the first love, but I'm able to do a lot of the crime thriller stuff as well. So it's kind of neat.
Well, Hunter, let me ask you. I read Creature, which is masterful, and I think anyone reading Creature would probably agree with me that yes, it's horror, but there's so much more to it. Have you ever thought about stepping outside the genre and taking a crack at any number of other things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that book is horror in the true sense of like real life horror until you get to the last act, which I still don't know how I did that book. My wife won't read it, by the way. She'll get 20 pages in and she goes, "Why do I want to read about us? And why did you say this?" I'm like, "Well, if you think that now, please don't go any further." It's funny. The very first book that I published was a children's picture book. And true to fashion, I killed the main character. It's a beautiful book, but I've heard that schools and counselors use it as a book for kids handling grief. So that was kind of a cool offshoot. And then I did go on. I worked with Amazon for a while on a program they had for early readers. So I was writing a lot of kids, kind of like flash fiction. It's dialogue only, and they would animate it for the kids. And then I also I did a little ghostwriting gig. So I did a thriller that had no horror whatsoever. And I wrote that. I feel like I wrote that a lifetime ago, and it hasn't come out yet. It's coming out next year. So I can't wait to read it and actually remember what the heck I wrote. But I thought that I had a great time with that. I tell everybody, I will write whatever you want me to write. Just put my name on the check. And the good thing is I enjoy all kinds of genres. So I'm not just horror. I've even liked romance novels. So I'm down for it. Bob Ford does romance novels. If he can do it, I can. He's demented. So am I.
Well, Wayne, do you got any questions here, or shall I plunge forward?
I'm looking over at YouTube, and I've already asked the obvious question. Nick, what happened to your background? I've already answered that, so we can skip.
I can put the background up, but the reason I took the background down so I could show off a present I received from Chris Sorenson. This is the Patterson Gimlin. That's
something the actual plaster cast.
Yeah, I'm going to give if people in the tropical authors world are wondering why we put together a horror thing, I did have another start before I moved on to tropical writing.
For everybody who's familiar with Nick's tropical writing, you got to read Zombie Bigfoot. I mean, when he put those two words together in a title, he had me hooked right there. I started reading that book, and it was just absolutely horrific and hilarious at the same time. It was awesome.
It is one of my favorite zombie books.
Well,
and Bigfoot books combined. Both genres.
Thank you.
It's nuts.
Well, the interesting thing, I had a reviewer who I greatly respect, Brian of Brian's book blogs. He does audiobooks. And he goes, I really like this. He goes, but this is action adventure. He's like, I know it's horror, but no, and I was like, well, yeah, it's a creature feature. It's more like Michael Crichton than Stephen King, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's probably why it was easier for me to zip over to doing action, adventure, and thrillers. Chris, I think you had a thriller banging around in your head. Is that something we might see anytime soon?
That's the plan. That's what this long winter is going to be for. So I've been playing around with this character who is about to have to put her dog down and decides not to, and then goes up to a cabin kind of like where we live, and she just chooses the wrong cabin to visit. So it's in the serial killer genre.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not ready really to say much more about it than that.
Well, I just remembered a bit of conversation I heard from Wayne, and I want to make sure we steer toward it. What we have here on this group right now, yes, I've got a Bigfoot book. Hunter's got a skunk ape book, and Armand has a Bigfoot book and a skunk ape book, and I know Chris has lots of Bigfoot banging around in his head because he's the one that gave me that Bigfoot cast. But when I mentioned skunk ape, Wayne, like, you could tell he reacted a certain way. And I believe Wayne has a skunk ape story that might be of interest.
Yeah, this happened before we went live. When I heard the word skunk ape, I was like, flashback. Back in 1976 or 75, me and a couple of buddies of mine were deer hunting up on Lake Winder, way up the St. Johns River from Melbourne, about halfway between Melbourne and Orlando. And we were all sitting around a campfire. And of course, there was alcohol involved, even though we were only 17, but there was still alcohol involved. And we heard this strange cry way off in the distance. Sounded kind of like a cross between a peacock and a wounded panther. And then we heard it again, and it was closer. And then we heard it again, and it was closer still. And then we started hearing something moving around our camp. And so we all jumped up, got away from the fire, and got in the shadow of this big oak tree. And we're kind of hunkering down and scared to death. And there was a full moon coming up over the lake. And this thing appeared in silhouette right in front of the moon. And all I know is that it was shaped kind of like a man, except he had no neck whatsoever, and he was a whole lot bigger. And of course, we'd all heard the stories of the skunk ape growing up in Florida. And then this absolutely putrid smell overtook us. And as soon as that happened, we just all started unloading. I mean, we had a 30-30 rifle, a 30-06, 2 shotguns. We unloaded everything. And whatever it was disappeared. To this day, I don't know. Could be the alcohol, could be, a great story, but we were camped right next to an Indian mound. So maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. But that's my skunk ape story.
That's incredible. I mean, so now you're all shooting at it and nobody hits it.
Yeah,
So
go figure. Well,
when you look
of course,
back,
there was
do you think-
alcohol involved. Did you miss
Oh,
that?
true. Yeah, true. You all might. I've been recruits for stormtroopers for the Star Wars series too. That's fascinating.
But yeah, it actually happened. I've heard stories of. I remember one guy saying he saw this thing come out of the bushes. He was about to shoot a deer across a field about 200 yards. This thing came out of the bushes, and the deer took off running, and it chased it and caught it.
Oh,
And I don't know if he's telling, he's making up a story or what, but the skunk ape stories abound throughout South Florida and Central Florida.
wow. Look, I would love to see a skunk ape. I just don't know if I want to be close enough to smell it.
Oh, it was the absolute worst smell I've ever. That's what convinced us that it was legit. I alcohol can do strange things to your mind, make you see things, make you hear things, but rarely does it make you smell things.
True.
That's a good point.
And rarely does it make everyone who's been drinking see the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's so many regional Bigfoot. I mean, it's like well, I grew up in Illinois, and we always heard about the Murfreesboro Monster down in southern Illinois, and it was like it's described more Yeti-like, tufted white hair, and Momo. We always heard about Momo, the Missouri Monster.
Yep. You got the Ohio Grassman. I mean, the whole country. Bat Squatch is the one I'd want to see the most. If I could catch a bat squatch. Oh yeah, there's a bat squatch.
Is he like a vigilante who fights crime in the forest?
I mean, I always think of bat squatch like Man Bat, who used to fight Batman. They kind of maybe just like a little hairier.
My wife just reminded me on YouTube that I left that part of the story. After this thing disappeared, the fire started getting lower and lower, and here's these 3 17-year-old kids in the woods with guns, and we were scared, so we needed to go get some firewood. So we crossed this barbed wire fence, and that's when we realized we were right next to a Indian mound, and we're picking up all these deadfalls and everything. And one of my buddies says, "Hey, look at this!" And we came over, and I shined a flashlight, and there was this leaf. It was kind of a banana-shaped leaf. There were 3 of them. And the one in the middle was going like this, back and forth in a half twist. And I was smoking a cigarette, and the smoke was going straight up with not a breath of wind. But that leaf was just going back and forth. So again, we ran back to the fire and stoked it up again. I think we ended up spending the night on the boat.
That was probably wise.
Well, since you're talking about what in my mind is immediately a really creepy location, I am wondering. So we've got Chris and Armand here, both from Jersey, and Hunter, you're not from far away. You're just over the border there in New York.
Mhm.
Have you all been to the Pine Barrens? Because I know Hunter here wrote a book about the Jersey Devil, and I'm guessing if there was a Bigfoot type individual in New Jersey, the Pine Barrens would be a nice place to hang out. Has anyone had a creepy night there?
I had a weird day there. Well, a couple of days, because we did research, before I started writing the Jersey Devil. I said, I want to actually see the Pine Barrens. So my brother-in-law and I, we just jumped in the car, just drove. Once we hit it, we would just go anywhere where the roads took us. And if we saw something cool, we'd get out, we'd take a look around. So like a lot of the things that we saw ended up in the book with the cemetery, and there's a bar in there. But then we started talking to people. All we got were Bigfoot stories. It seemed everybody who lives in the Pine Barrens, ATVs, late at night, and they've all seen a Bigfoot. And it wasn't just on that trip, because I've done book signings down there, and people came up and go, "Yeah, I never saw the Jersey Devil, but my brother and I saw Bigfoot one night." And I'm like, man, there's something out there. Who would? Maybe it's Tony Soprano running around the woods. I don't know.
I thought Bigfoot was a Pacific Northwest thing.
Oh, there's Bigfoots in the East Coast more than you'd think.
Yeah.
There's
Is it
Bigfoots not far
or
from New
big
York.
feet.
That's a good question.
Pretty sure it's Bigfoots.
I used Bigfoot as the
I used to write Peter Byrne and Renee Dahin when I was a kid, and they'd write me back. And so it's Bigfoots, according to them.
Let me ask, the Pine Barrens, when you were researching down there, did you come across a town called Ong's Hat?
We wanted to go to, we were close to Ong's Hat, and then it was getting really dark. And we had just come from being in the field where people were shooting at random somewhere. And I said, I think they might be hunting. They might be shooting at us. There could be a pot farm right over this little ridge here. I don't know. Let's get back in the car. Let's not be stupid, city folk out here. But yeah, that was on my list of places to go. I really wanted to see that. Have you been there?
Yes. It's a I mean, all I saw was this weird little bar with a hat inside, which was apparently Ong's. But what I learned later was apparently it had been the site of some extra dimensional experiment gone awry.
Right.
And I thought, this is just too strange and tiny a little town to pick for the location of that. But when I saw Stranger Things with that location that things are happening, I immediately thought of Ong's Hat. I thought, oh, that's kind of what I had in my mind, that somewhere out there's some facility.
Right. Well, because that show's based on what MK Ultra out in Montauk and all that stuff. So yeah, why not? Maybe there's a tunnel between the two, a little time tunnel.
I'm going to tie something in. Because since we're talking about monsters and audio, Hunter, your Jersey Devil was made into a not an audio book, but more of an audio dramatization.
Yeah.
But it's a hybrid.
It is. It's really. I didn't know that was happening either. That was just what I didn't even know there was an audio deal coming till they said, "Hey, listen to this. It's done." And I was like, and I'd had some bad experiences with audiobooks with narrators. You know, if you have a book that's written in first person by a woman and you have some dude, kind of doesn't work. When I heard that graphic audio, the way they did it with actors and sound effects and music, and you can hear the Jersey Devil snarling and ripping people apart, I was like, oh, this is amazing. It was really, it's one of those things when you listen to it, you go, did I write this? Like, you can't believe that this is what somebody interpreted your work as. I loved it.
Did they remove like attributions and things and just have people speaking in the voice?
It was a little bit of everything. Yeah, they couldn't do the whole book in the amount of time that they were doing this, but it was what they nailed it. They actually did a great job. They didn't leave anything out where I go, what? That's important.
Here's a question from YouTube. This is from Britnick for Nick of the North. When's the
he's
zombie
Nick of the South?
When's the zombie sequel coming out? Zombie Bigfoot sequel. I know you've already partially written it. There's a bunch of notes over there.
I've zoomed in. I've written all the notes down. I'm going to get it out before he does.
Just write it for me, because I'm working on Deep Devil up here, which is, even though it's called Deep Devil, that's more action adventure. But Zombie Bigfoot sequel, that'll be next.
Does it have a title yet?
Yes, but I'm not going to say it.
Oh, come on.
I'm calling it ZBF2. Everywhere I have it, Zombie Bigfoot,
Okay.
ZBF2.
I like it.
Let's see. Oh, this is something we do have some authors that listen to this podcast, and I think this is interesting because I've got books in different genres. I have noticed in action adventures and thrillers, Facebook is king, but horror, I see Twitter interaction on horror that you just don't see if you've got like a spy thriller. It's all over on Facebook. And I'm curious if you guys, have you noticed that? Do you have a lot of Facebook interaction, or is it mostly on Twitter? And also, does anyone here use Instagram a lot? Because I'm hopeless about that, and I'm thinking that's probably a smart place to go.
I have an Instagram account, and I've made 2 posts. I've had the account for 4 years, I think. So, no.
You pace yourself, though. You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
For me, it's Twitter. My wife is always on Instagram because she's very visual, and is always sourcing things for weddings and such. But I've made a lot of relationships on Twitter with different writers. I can't remember, Hunter, when did we hook up on Twitter?
I think I was stalking outside your house. No,
that was you, wasn't it?
I think it was Twitter.
Yeah, I think so.
Twitter is so much easier and quicker for interaction and building a relationship than Facebook is. It just encourages more dialogue, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That in the horror community is so strong in there, and it's the most supportive community you're ever going to find.
Yeah.
most of
Facebook is like one and done.
Yeah, most for me, the Facebook and the Instagram is just where I'm basically posting. So I'll come up with something for Twitter, and I automatically will post it to Instagram and Facebook. And I also use Buffer, so I'm spreading things out on all three all the time. So it looks like 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm sleeping that I'm actually posting and stuff. But Twitter's the interaction, but I also have a ton of followers on there. So I know if I pop something out there, 133,000 people are seeing it right now. And I get a ton of sales. Like I'll do, if anything goes on sale for 99 cents, or I do a free book or whatever, I'll post it on Twitter and I'll get a ton of interaction from it, and I'll get a ton of sales from that. So it's definitely, for me, Twitter's always been, easily the best one.
Yeah, you post. I mean, you are everywhere. It's amazing how much you put out there.
A lot of it is all scheduled stuff.
Yeah, which I kind of stole that from you. But then, some days I'll be like really good. I'll spend an hour just like scheduling everything, and then it'll be weeks before I do it again.
Yeah, see, I do it every day on 7 different Twitter accounts.
Oh,
so I'm constantly, yeah. Well, I do one called hashtag. It's Armand Helps, and all it is I'm resharing other people's books, or I'm sharing articles and writing stuff out there. So then I have 2 different podcast ones. I have the podcast network one. So I have a lot of different Twitter accounts that I build up, and I basically share stuff back and forth at different times. But it's a lot of just interaction. It's a lot of just, I got 20 minutes to kill before I'm going to go make lunch, and I'll go on Twitter and I'll just go to one of the feeds and I'll just start talking to people, and people talk back to you.
Yeah. What's your secret to building over 100,000 followers when you're not a Kardashian?
Just basically interacting with people.
Damn.
Finding the right people, and finding somebody who has so I'll go on yours, for instance, Hunter, and I'll just go to your followers. I don't care who you're following. Whoever's just recently followed you, the last 5 or 6 people that followed you, I follow back. And then on at least 1 or 2 of them, I'll go in and I'll like something they posted, or I'll just start talking to them. And it's the interaction. But at this point, with so many, and I've had that account for 7 or 8 years, however long it's been, I probably get 50 or 60 people every day that add me. So it just kind of builds itself at that point. I've never paid for any of them. And then every now and then I'll go in and I'll just have to cut down on the people who aren't following me back, that haven't followed me back. So it's a lot of work.
You're doing a lot of virtual pressing the flesh. I mean, you're like, you are out there going door to door virtually on everybody's sites.
Yeah. Like I'll do posts every day. I'll do a post like, oh, Chris has got a new book out. Okay. So then I tag you in it on Twitter and I'll share your book. Now, a lot of those too I use Amazon Associates. So I'm making 3 or 4 cents on top of that. So I'm still making money, and it's posting out there, and I'm posting your book twice every account for 7 different accounts over the next, say, 2 weeks. So hopefully it helps you get sales. It helps me get an extra couple of pennies, and then it's that interaction of your followers and whatever. So it's just a matter of building it that way.
Yeah, your dedication is amazing. And
I started a Twitter account about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and I can't follow Twitter. It just moves too fast. But I've somehow built 30,000 followers.
Yeah, you just kind of jump into the stream every now and then is what happens, because it updates so quick. When you have that many followers, it's going to update for you so quickly. You just kind of jump in. I'm also very big on the hashtags. Hashtag writers lift, hashtag writing community. Now obviously Nanowrimo, so I'm using hashtag Nanowrimo, and I'm following a ton of people there, and I'm just randomly commenting when somebody posts, "Hey, I did 5,000 words today," or whatever, and you just jump in and you just interact with people.
Can you, for our listeners, can you explain what NaNoWriMo is?
No, they're gonna have to figure it out.
Good night, everyone.
It's the thing I won't do.
No, it's the thing I've done every year for 12 years, and I've only not finished it once. So It's basically November. It's writing 50,000 words of a novel, and it's 667 words a day. It should be your average, and it'll hit you 50,000 words at the end of November. And I love it because even though I'm kind of writing that every month anyway, it's fun because of the interaction with other people, and it also helps me obviously build the followers on Twitter and everything else. So it's needed. You know, they have their own nanowrimo.org, and you can buddy with people and you can follow them, and then we argue and we try to kill each other and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun, and it's cool for new authors if you need that little extra motivation to actually finish something. Then it's a cool thing. But every year I usually, like, I've written, I think 2 or 3 of the Dirty Deeds books. I've written it in that month, and my very first novel sale, I wrote it in 2004 with NaNoWriMo, and I sold it in January 2006 is when that one came out. So I love it. I love doing it. It gives me more words, and it helps me. My writing year starts October 1st, and my goal is 400,000 words for the year. And I keep track of all of that. So it really helps me when I'm doing, last year I think I did 70,000 words in November. So.
Yeah, you know, my issue is I'm so anti-authoritarian, and it seems like something telling me what I have to do in a certain time period that I just can't do it. I'm like, go scratch. I'm going to write at my own time. You don't tell me.
You've always been a rebel. You've always been a rebel.
But I mean, every point you make is a great and valid point. I see it do a lot of good. It motivates people, and it creates accountability for folks, and they feed off each other, and I think it's great.
But you don't need that motivation. You're still probably killing it anyway. So I mean,
I want to get paid.
Yeah.
Well, we're past the halfway point. So what's everybody drinking?
In honor of Halloween, I've got a Evil Genius Trick or Treat Pumpkin Porter.
I have a random bottle of Bordeaux that was in my wine cellar that my daughter, the wine manager, brings home. It's good, whatever.
Oh, that must be nice.
Oh, it's lovely.
I am drinking peach sweet tea with bourbon and what the hell? The peach schnapps. Couldn't think of what it was.
You said it much better before you were drinking it.
Yeah, well, I've actually it's been in this glass, so this is like my 4th or 5th of it. So yeah. So
Oh wow!
this better end in like another half an hour or so. That's all, or I'm going to be chipped back.
Oh, by the way,
Well,
anyone
I missed.
I've gone too fancy. This wine, it's in a plastic cup. I am just as much of a lowlife as always.
I messed up when I hit the bar before coming up to the studio, and I reached into the bar and grabbed this bottle of Pusser's, what I thought was Pusser's Blue Label, which is actually the Black Label. And this is gunpowder proof, 139 proof rum. So when I poured it in the glass over a couple of ice cubes, took the first sip, I realized my mistake right away. I added a little bit of Dr. Pepper to it, and now we're fine.
All right. Well, the Dr. Pepper will probably make an open flame safe near that.
I will be the orange seltzer member of the Brady Bunch here.
Now,
All right.
how do you pronounce that?
This orange seltzer, LaCroix?
LaCroix. Okay. I was hoping you go. Oh, but-
LaCroix.
Delicious LaCroix.
Well, since we're doing funny voices, let me ask: do you all have, for our listeners, any recommendations? And it does not have to be any of us, but recommendations of horror audiobooks that you really liked. I know not necessarily everyone listens to them, but I've certainly listened to some marvelous, creepy ones in my time.
Armand, you go first.
Thanks. Thanks for throwing me under the bus. I don't listen to audiobooks. It drives me nuts. My mind wanders. My wife loves them. My wife does a podcast, and she mostly listens to audiobooks because she drives up to Atlanta and back once a month. So it's like a 5.5-hour drive back and forth. So she'll listen to, like, over the course of a day or two, she'll listen to an audiobook, and she absolutely loves it. and my mind wanders, and I start thinking of other things, and it just really drives me nuts. So I have a lot of my books on audio, and I will literally go, here, honey, listen to this. Tell me if this is good or not, because I have no idea.
I mean, I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks because if I'm doing audio, I'm doing a lot of podcasts because I'm addicted. So like a lot of my audiobook listening has tailed off, but also because my mind wanders. So when I'm reading a book, I really want to be in the book. If I'm listening to an audiobook, especially if I'm in the car, I'd be like, oh, pretty lady. Oh, accident over here. Oh, and then I lose the thread. So I don't like to shortchange a book. But if you're going to listen to Stephen King, anything narrated, get the Stephen Weber. Does an amazing job with the Stephen King books. That's mesmerizing when I put them in.
I wholeheartedly support that. Yeah, Weber's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking
who
of
knew?
Stephen King, Greta asks on YouTube, how many of y'all are Stephen King fans? I'm sure that's a unanimous.
Yep.
Nope. I'm a
Oh,
Dean
that's right.
Koontz guy. Yeah, I'm a Dean Koontz guy. I think I've read 2 Stephen King books in my entire life, and my mother hates me for that because she is a huge Stephen King fan.
You know what? Every night I'm going to call you up and I'm going to read you a chapter of Stephen King. I'm going to read you to sleep every night. And
My mother every Christmas without fail will give me a Stephen King paperback, and she says, "Here, read this," and I say, "I'm not going to, but thank you."
Wow. No. So you obviously had a bad experience with the couple that you read.
For me, it's a personal thing. It's just it's too wordy for me. There's too much. And I actually grew up a huge fan of Dean Koontz, but the stuff that he did early in the 70s and stuff, all the action adventure stuff he wrote under pen names. So that's really what got me into it more than like the horror stuff. But I've read Skeleton Crew. I like short stories. I thought that had some good. I mean, The Mist was a good story. I mean, it's not that I hate Stephen King. It's just that there's always something else I would rather be reading.
Right. I would suggest, if you don't want wordy, it's non-horror, Joyland.
Here we go.
Joyland. Joyland is actually one of my favorite books of all time. It's a Stephen King book, and it's it made me cry.
I'm making pretend I'm writing that down.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
That'll be the first one I call you up for at night.
Colorado Kid is under that same imprint, isn't it?
Yes. Hard Case Crime.
What is it? Jeffrey DeMond did the narration for that, didn't he, Nick?
Yes.
And I that's one of my favorites. It's not horror. It's more metaphysical.
Right.
It's a mystery wrapped inside of a lobster roll, But Night Shift. I love that's what got me to King, was reading those, The Mangler and Strawberry Spring, and
I read that book in this attic when I was 10.
Yeah.
So this is because my dad would keep all his books up here. So that was the first one I grabbed. I'd come up here and read it. And then when I was done, I was going through his books, grabbing like Lovecraft and whatever else he had laying around, like Coons and John Saul and anything I could get my hands on.
Do you live in your parents' house, or you inherited their house?
We were gone for 26 years, and here we are again, right back where it all started.
Since we're hearing about horror writers other than King, I think a lot of people have heard of Dean Koontz. I recently had the opportunity, and we were actually hoping to have him on with us. I got to record 2 Robert Mccammon books, Stinger and Mystery Walk. And I'll be honest, I had never heard of him, and my goodness, he's good.
He's my writing hero.
So I don't know, do you all know Mccammon, and would you recommend a book to listeners who wanted a good spook story that wasn't one of the big ones? Well, he worship is big.
Mccammon. Yeah, I'm going to say
not King and not Coons.
Trying to pick one Robert Mccammon book is impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, the usual people do Swan Song, which I love that, but Boy's Life is my favorite.
Boy's Life.
Yeah.
I think once you read one, you start reading all of them. I mean, he's one of those authors. You know, he's like Joe Lansdale. Once you read a Lansdale, you just want to read all the rest of them.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well,
There's a long
Hopefully
pause,
an
so
audiobook.
Nick has to pick up his notepad.
I'm
yeah,
just thinking,
there's a lapse where I look.
if you
But I'm
had
gonna
him
say-
on the show, I would have been so starstruck. I don't think I'd be capable of speech.
Yeah, I mean, I recorded Mystery Walk, and it creeped me the heck out. Stinger wasn't nearly as scary, but it was a ton of fun. It was sort of like someone was asking me what it was like, and I said it was West Side Story meets Aliens. It's just,
Yeah.
it's a blast.
Yeah. Gone South is a great book too.
Gone South.
Yeah, you have to check out Gone South. That's amazing. And They Thirst. You vampire folks out there.
Oh, here's a big question. Okay. And we're actually looking for some wisdom from you guys. I believe all of you have written a lot of short stories, and this is something, you know, Wayne and I both spend a lot of our time with action, adventure, thriller writers, and we don't put out a lot of short stories, but it's such a marvelous venue, and you all, I believe, write for anthologies and magazines and such. What can you tell us about the art of writing a short story?
Who's going to
Hunter.
go first?
Hunter.
Oh, all right, you make me go first again. Here we go. Turnabout's fair play. It's like writing a novel, only shorter. I have to tell you, when I first started saying I want to be a writer, I forget who I met who said, you know what, try writing short stories first. They're actually harder. So work on the harder thing first. And as you then work your way up to a novel, by the time you get to a novel, it's a breeze. And they're right, because you have to pack a lot into a little. And I've written so many novels that when I write a short story, it's a challenge. And that's why I like it. Horror tends to breed anthologies. There's always an anthology out there. And the beautiful part is, once you've been writing for a while, people are coming to you and going, hey, do you want to write? Would you like to participate in this one, that one? You kind of get to pick and choose based on the theme, or maybe it's fun and there's no theme whatsoever. But yeah, it's an art form unto itself. And I'm far from perfected that art. And it's one of those things I'd like to work at more as I go forward. But they're fun too. And grueling. I'm telling you, the shorter it is, like when I wrote the children's picture book, it nearly killed me. I'm like, in the time it took to write that and edit it back and forth, I wrote 2 full-length novels. So short stuff is tough, but rewarding.
And my friend Eric Stone, he's a trop rock author or trop rock singer songwriter turned author, just released his first book. And he says writing a novel is a whole lot easier than writing a song, because you got to tell the story in 4 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. If someone tells you, can you write me a short story in 2,000 words or less? You're like, what? I can't even describe the toaster in the kitchen in 2,000 words at this point.
Nick Harvey on YouTube is saying that the top 50 of Amazon sea stories right now are dominated by short stories.
There you go, guys.
How that happened, but I was wondering why my latest release is suddenly down at number 20.
Poor Wayne.
It's a rough life, dude.
Yeah. I think horror, though, short stories or novellas, I always find them a better read for me as a reader, because I think you can tell that story in that smaller amount of space, whereas, you know, the crime thrillers and the different things I read are usually much longer. You know, I mean, you look at fantasy, and, you know, you can't tell that story in under 1,000 pages sometimes. But with horror, I really enjoy those short stories, and I love writing them too. You know, I mean, to me, that's where I cut my teeth. I cut my teeth all through the late 80s, all into the 90s. I wrote just short stories. My first actual longer piece wasn't released till 2006. So I went a long time with just knocking off those short stories. But like Hunter said, it's not everybody can write short stories and also write novels. It's like kind of writing screenplays. Not everybody can write screenplays and write comic books and write. It's a whole different format, and it's just a lot of fun to go, you know what? A short story is not a scene. It's an actual 3 acts put together in 5,000 words or 6,000 words or something. So it's a huge challenge. But I think for me, I like to go back and forth because I enjoy that craziness of is this idea 75,000 words or is it 7,500 words?
Yeah. And you know what? If you don't do them for a long time and then you try to do one, you go, wow, this isn't like riding a bike at all.
No.
Yeah.
This is like riding a bike while juggling. So it takes a bit. You got to really, knock the rust off.
There's a ticking clock with them too. I mean, it's like you can't meander around and find your story. You've got to find it quick. And
yeah, because you have a hard word count.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh, wait, I have only 300 words left and I haven't gotten near my third act.
I'm over the edge. Damn, I guess it wasn't a short story.
I just spent the last 2,000 words talking about coffee. Now what am I going to do?
I will tell you a terrible writing experience. I was doing the ghostwriting gig, and you have to become that author, right? So you have to get that person's voice in your head. So I'm doing the book and I am 300 pages in. And I said, all right, let me stop because I've probably got another 100 to go. And let me just reread this. And I realized from page 150 on, it became me. And I said, I have to rewrite half of this damn book. I was so dejected. I was like, oh, why? But you get into a groove, right? And that's the beauty of also novel writing. You can get into a groove and it can last for days or weeks. And yeah, I got in the wrong groove. I said, I'm never doing this again. And then when it was done, I said, I'd do this again.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a ghostwriting sort of co-writing thing under someone's name, couldn't you go, hey, it's sort of me, these 150. Do you want to like make it more you and just they really want you to do all of it?
Yeah, my editor would have put his foot squarely up my behind if I said, this is my take on it. Yeah. No, the readers want his take on it.
Well, it looks like we're getting close to the end of the show. Nick, there was something I asked you, I forget what it was now, to discuss before I did the thanks to our sponsors. You remember?
I don't remember.
You're drawing a blank? Okay, let's keep talking for 2 minutes. So.
Okay.
I'm going to tap these two puppies right here.
Oh, nice. Look at you.
Oh,
see, I'm not the guy who brings his own book.
I would show your book, but I found out UPS came today, didn't ring the bell, and then left a note at the door saying, tried, we'll come again tomorrow.
Yeah. It's been delayed left and right. So Nick,
I can't wait to read it.
You don't even have a copy.
Who?
Nick Sullivan. You don't have a copy of this?
I don't think I have a copy of that.
Oh, okay.
Do you have a copy of this?
I do.
Not with that cover, I don't.
But you mean you have a copy of this?
I have one of those, yes.
Yeah, the new cover looks really cool.
I lucked out of Francois Villancourt, who does some of Stephen King's books. His kid was really into Bigfoot, so nice. I got that.
Armand's book right behind him, The Beast, I'm reading that next.
And that's actually based on, we were talking about it before, that's based on an actual, it's set in 1986 in Middletown, New Jersey, which is where I grew up. And it's based on an urban legend of Bigfoot living in Horsey Park in Middletown. So that's where I got the idea from.
Now, have you written a story about the evil clown of Middletown?
It's not that evil when you grew up with the clown.
It's a giant liquor sign.
Yeah. It's still there, even though it used to be Pathmark. It was originally the old Pathmark. For years as a kid, you would go to Pathmark, and there was the clown, the food circus.
And not at all creepy.
Not at all. Also, you need to read my book Frozen in Ice, which is a monster book. It's a sci-fi book set. It's kind of like The Thing, but in the South Pole. And only because one of the main characters in it is named Hunter Shea.
Yeah.
So no, not you at all. I swear.
That's
Oh, I
fine.
forgot to ask everyone about their favorite killing off of friends in their books. I don't know how much time we have left.
We are out of
We're
time.
Next time.
Next time.
Yeah. We'll kill each
Well-
other in all our next books.
On that note, I want to thank you guys for being here with us tonight. It's been a great discussion, a lot of fun. I want to thank our sponsors, tropicalauthors.com. If you're looking for a good beach read, go to tropicalauthors.com. You'll find us all there. Well, not these guys. Well, some of them, yeah.
I'm there.
But anyway, it's a great website to find new stories to read. I'd like to thank Cinematic Book Trailer. You guys, if you're interested, I mean, this guy does some fantastic book trailers. If you guys are interested in doing book trailers, he does some really cool work. And of course, Pirate Radio. You can download the Pirate Radio app from Google or the App Store on Apple, and listen to my friend Eric Stone play once an hour and Jimmy Buffett once an hour and a whole bunch of other trop rock authors. And of course, my publisher, Down Island Press. Nick, you got any closing remarks?
No, I just everybody enjoy the rest of 2020. let's move on to the next good thing. And this was a lot of fun. I think we're gonna probably try to do this again next Halloween.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would have been great to do it on Halloween, but my doorbell would have been going off like crazy, and this microphone is very, very sensitive.
Yeah. By this time of night on Halloween night, I am not speaking well with words.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. Thanks again for joining us.
Good night. Thank you.
You.
Yeah, thanks.